call this meeting to order. My 8th meeting of the Chelmsford Planning Boards, which will be live and on Zoom. Should the Zoom go down, we will continue the meeting nonetheless. First, we'll open with public input.
Well, we should also identify there's board members on Zoom.
Yes.
Oh, yes. On Zoom, we have John, who's ill, and Anita, and Mike is going to be 10 minutes late.
Good.
Thank you, John. So, do we have anyone for public input? Okay. Nothing for administrative review. We have an awful lot of continuances. First, 110 Middlesex Street, Suite 1, Marchi LLC. I'll take a motion.
Do we need to read that
No.
first? Okay.
Continuing.
We just need to pick a date.
I
22nd.
move that we continue to, what was the,
5/22.
5/22?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
And John and Anita? Do you concur with continuing?
Can John hear us?
John, can you
Johnny!
hear?
John, can you hear us?
Johnny, can you hear me?
Is Anita on?
Johnny?
I see him, but he doesn't. Can you hear us, John?
Is Anita on?
Anita's on, but she's muted.
Anita? Can you show us your
Anita-
happy face?
Write a note to him.
Sounds like neither one can hear us.
Hello.
Hello.
Pollen is high.
Where's the camera?
All right,
Can you guys hear us?
I got a text. Wake up.
Oh, here he comes.
I don't see chat here.
Say, can you chat?
I don't even see it.
I think he just got the text.
Yeah, we're on mute. He's on mute too.
He's muted.
What's up?
Should
Oh,
we,
just the
should we
usual.
assume that
We can't hear you.
no one can hear us?
Yeah, he can.
So we'll start again after we get that squared away?
Anita, can you hear us?
We can't hear you.
Must be on our end.
Could,
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
thank you, Virginia.
Chris, can you text Anita?
I did.
Oh, thank you. Do we have John's number? I've been texting.
1, 2, 3.
So Anita said she and John can hear each other, but they can't hear us.
They can't hear us.
Huh.
I wonder if I should shut down
Sorry,
Zoom.
John, you're gonna have to come
I
in.
don't know if it's Zoom related or
It could be.
You could restart it, right?
I think I'm gonna shut it down and restart.
We are
Well, since we
rebooting.
have technical difficulties, you did say that we would continue. Just joking. Yeah.
I did say that. Do you want to move over one?
You look at the pollen count today.
Only a doctor could say that.
Yeah, doctor.
I didn't wear a mask. How about you just slide that way a little bit?
We are continuing, right, though?
Come on, let's get this.
I would assume they would be amenable to this, but.
Yeah, we could, yeah, we will.
Evan, was there anyone else on
We still
Zoom?
have a majority, so we can still proceed.
Rob Smith.
Yeah, so we have a majority, so we can proceed to the next item.
Technically, we can do business, but we ought to be able to get this fixed.
Data's okay.
I was gonna say, we have the technology, but I'm not
Yeah.
really sure we do.
I've heard that before.
Casey, nice do. Nice do.
All right, what do we have? How many other hearings do you have on the 22nd? That's the question, too.
Nothing new, whatever you continue tonight.
So we'll have Hildreth.
If the studies are all done, right?
And then didn't we push someone off already to the 22nd?
I thought we made us, yeah, we kicked someone out 2 meetings, I forget who that was. Who was that?
Anita,
So
can
we'll
you hear
have-
us now?
Middlesex. We'll have,
He looks dumbfounded.
Okay, that's fine. I was just wondering if we already had loaded up ones.
I'm supposed to have it muted.
who's talking?
They were muted.
Virginia. She's in the back.
They are now. They don't hear us yet. Or we don't hear them. Oh, they do.
Yes.
Okay, we're good. Okay,
What's that?
we're good.
John, you can hear us? All right, so he can hear us, but
We can't hear him.
Hold up, I gotta tell him to hold up signs.
sign language.
Should we start again?
I can hear you, but just not
Yeah, I
as a
would just
meeting.
take this item.
Okay.
Please hold up some
Okay.
signs.
How about if we at least approve the continuances?
Works for me.
So I made the motion, it was seconded.
Okay, all in favor of approving the continuance of,
Hildreth? No.
no, it was the
110
Middlesex.
Street. Oh, they can,
Okay,
I'm in favor, yes. Are they continuing also?
yes.
Oh, boy. It's getting shorter and shorter.
Yeah.
Okay. Motion
I can hear
to,
you
I will
now.
take a motion regarding 10 Hildreth.
I move that we continue that to the 22nd? Is that
I'll
the
second
correct-
that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
Okay.
before we go
Oh,
on,
she said aye. She voted.
I'm good.
Plus Anita voted.
John didn't vote.
before we go on to the next thing, I would like to ask that any letters of continuance not include debate and arguments, because we can't respond to them if we're continuing.
Yeah.
So I would ask that if we do get a letter of continuance from an applicant, that it only be a letter of continuance and not a letter that includes information for the hearing itself,
Or
I think
arguments
that
about
makes sense.
Yeah.
because it is now in the record and we can't respond to it.
Okay, so, next up, we have,
Do we want to continue Brick Kiln?
Yeah, why don't we do that one?
take a motion.
I will move that we continue 93 Brick Kiln till the 22nd.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Yep, we
they're
got
both
hands.
eyes up there.
John and Anita.
Our eyes.
And then, do we want to, do we solve our technical difficulties?
No.
Nope.
Do we want to do the minutes out of order?
Why not?
While we're still waiting on the technical difficulties before we advance to 270? Does that sound like a good plan?
Sounds good.
Did everyone have a chance to read the minutes
Yeah.
in their voluminous?
I can't say as I saw anything
Let's look at,
jumped out at me.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
hold on. a
Hold
second.
on.
Well, let's,
John and Anita, do you guys give a thumbs up if you are approving the meeting minutes? Thumbs up.
Thumbs up, okay.
On February, I did note a couple errors that I did send in to Becky. February 14th, the MBTA slides. It was Mike Walsh and not Mike Raisbeck that worked on the slides.
Right.
You can give him credit.
my name is also like consistently spelled wrong with
Yeah. And then I
an
had
E instead of an O.
I had a misspelling on March 27th, number 5, on the brick kiln vote. So those are the only 2 corrections I sent in to Becky.
Okay.
And she's gonna modify them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Take a motion,
Motion to approve?
Second,
the 5 minutes as specified with the corrections as specified.
that's gonna get us pretty much up to date.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Two over there.
Unanimous? Okay.
They're good.
Okay.
Two ayes on the Zoom call. And I think that we are now up to
270.
Yeah, there's nothing else.
270 Billrica Road.
And they are here.
The question is how is
He gets
John and Anita
stood up
gonna
by
be
the-
able to? Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, he's here. I don't know if he'll be able to speak. I don't know if we'll hear him or not. We should probably test that. Rob, can you hear us, and are you able to speak, and so hopefully we can hear you? No, can't hear
What if-
him either. No, we don't hear you.
Oh. That's a problem.
So CTM is looking into it. They think the issue is that there's 2 CTMs logged in, indicating that there's a host and me. And then there's a second CTM.
Is there any way each one of us can make a phone call? Like I could call John, you could call Anita, and you could call the peer review and then have them on.
I don't
Does
know.
that work?
It's getting,
you could do that and just move the mic down.
We'll be able to communicate.
sign language.
I only know a couple of things.
Yeah. And you wouldn't want to display them in public.
Man,
Well, how about if we just did the consultant, and then if Anita or John, I mean, I would like them to participate in the discussion if there is any, but maybe we could at least get the presentations done, and maybe by then it will be squared away.
well, we don't
We
hear
can't-
the consultant. We can't hear the consultant.
Can't hear anybody on Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
What if
could
we
we
call
have
them?
him call in?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Call into
it's
what?
I mean, put
Just
him on
call him on the
speaker
phone.
and,
Call the bat phone.
That one. Old school. How did you Zoom back in the 70s?
What phone? There's no
No,
phone
no,
in the room.
he would call on his phone. He'll call out. Oh,
Whoa, I hear
what was
something.
that?
I heard a noise.
We got noises.
Was that one of us?
I don't think so.
Comedy show.
Johnny, can you hear me?
Maybe, my suggestion is maybe we recess for 10 minutes,
Yeah.
just shut the Zoom down completely,
okay.
recess for 10 minutes and see if they can figure it out.
Sure.
Okay.
That's what we're gonna do
Okay.
for now.
Sounds like a plan.
There's only one person.
Take a motion to recess.
I move to recess.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
John, do you hear us?
What's the Brady roast though?
You're muted, you're muted.
Oh, I haven't watched.
Try it
this.
without being muted. All right, let's hear you. No, I don't hear you.
So close.
I think he has laryngitis anyway. It's too bad. I'm gonna tell him to yell.
This is like the only time, well, I guess that's not true.
It happens.
So how were the Stones? You like them?
The instrumentals were great. Their voices aren't so good.
Stone?
And Neil Young.
John, try talking now.
Album coming out? Neil Young?
Yeah, I think so.
No.
Literally dozed off. It was like a head.
Yeah, fortunately.
Did you print it out? It's a pretty quick read.
What do you guys think?
You want to wait to open the meeting back up?
Or
Rob's not even with us at this point. You've given up.
Go on now.
Hello?
There we are. Hey, what's that?
Okay.
That was me.
So I guess we're on now. We're going to restart. We're having some technical difficulties for any of you watching at home. We're going to restart the planning board meeting of May 8th. And while we did not have a connection, we had several continuances. And we voted on those. So now we're going to,
This is 270?
yeah, we're going to continued public hearing for 270 Billrica Road, DH Holdings and Company, consideration for modifying or rescinding a minor mod from June 14th, 23.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Douglas DeShane from Finneran and Nicholson here representing DH Properties Holdings. We had intended to cover 3 issues tonight. One was a review of the peer review from Beta, which, as I understand and based on my reading, seemed to be a good peer review for us. It seems that most, if not all, of the issues have been addressed, at least with respect to what Beta was peer reviewing. The second item we wanted to talk about was the question relating to the project elevation. There have been questions by some board members and discussions of, even though we've now redesigned the project and we've provided our RAM plan and our O&M plan and all of the other things that Beta has reviewed, there appears to be still some questions relating to what changing the elevation of the project would do in terms of protection, but also project impact. So Casey's going to give you a quick overview and show you what is entailed at the current elevation versus if we were to bring the elevation up another foot or not drop it the full 2.5 feet. What that would mean. So we'd really like to get to the bottom of that so that we can put that question behind us. And the third issue we want to talk about is, as you will recall, my clients have agreed to a third-party reviewer, construction overview, or overview during actual parts of the construction. Again, we've agreed to that, but we do want to talk with the board about a defined scope of, what the board would like to see reviewed, at what interval, at what particular process, whatnot. So, again, we'd love to get that issue resolved so that it can be reflected in the decision, and there'll be no questions going forward or during construction as to the scope of that. Plus, also, as you can imagine, my clients would like a little financial predictability with what to expect to pay for that reviewer. So with that, we're going to skip over the Beta thing, but I would like, Casey's going to come up and give a little presentation on the elevation question, and then we can discuss that.
All right, good evening to the board. Casey Ferrer with Howard Stein Hudson. So as was discussed at the last meeting, I've prepared 2 exhibits here. The first exhibit, which I believe is up on your screen now, shows excavation with the potential to conflict with the groundwater plus 2 foot zone. I believe that's what it refers to as the VADOS zone. And this is the zone that we're proposing to be managed at any time that it is encountered. So what you'll see on the screen is there is yellow highlights as well as red highlights. The red highlights is where excavation goes below the groundwater contour elevation as derived from ED's hydrogeo. And the most locations where it's red is where we're installing a structure that extends deeper with a stone bedding and whatnot. So the excavation goes a little bit deeper than just trenching for drainage pipes. And again, the yellow is just where we get within that plus 2 foot zone. So as is...
Casey, before you go on, what file is this?
I just sent this as a presentation for what's there. I can provide it. I haven't held it now, so you guys can review it, but I just wanted to present this to you guys.
Okay.
So as you can kind of tell, this back area, this back corner is kind of the corner of concern where we're getting the deepest and the lowest. And then scattered throughout here, we just have structures that kind of sink into that zone. Evan, if you'll go to the next one. So on this plan, it shows if the site were just uniformly raised by 1 foot, which realistically could that happen or not? Unlikely, but if we just did a uniform 1 foot raise over the entire site, what the only real difference is what used to extend to about halfway or 3/4 down the back drive aisle into that plus 2 foot zone is now limited to maybe the first quarter of the building. But the structures that dove into the groundwater before still do, with the exception of these 4 catch basins. Those are just now in that Vados zone, or that zone that's to be managed anyway. The reason I didn't go up to plus 2 feet is because the original filing was only plus 2.5 from this. So we'd essentially, if we went up 2 feet, we'd be back to basically the original filing. So I did an analysis here of plus 1 foot and then the as proposed. I will mention that this corner where we do have our area of concern is at about the same elevation as that original filing, where the remainder of the site is about plus 2.5, but this corner, just because of the pinch point down to the wetland and how we had to grade it back up, that corner is about the same elevation, but the drainage pipes below are just a little bit deeper. So is there a difference in how much we'd be in that zone? Yes. My opinion would be that it's fairly minor. We're still in zones where we're going to have to manage it regardless. But then additionally, if we talk about raising the entire site uniformly by a foot, we're talking about approximately 8,000 cubic yards of fill across the entire thing, as compared to we're only at 4,000 now. So we'd be doubling our fill, adding that, so we'd be at 12,000. So it's really tripling the fill, which then has in turn construction impacts, bringing trucks in, etc. So we can dive down that path if you'd like, or we can answer questions about that.
What would the cost of that be approximately?
I
That's
do
not
know.
Look at that at all?
When we were at the plus 2.5, I believe we were looking at about $500,000 in fill. So if we cut that in half, maybe we're at $250,000, $300,000 in additional cost for fill, but that was also as of the cost a year ago. I don't know if costs have gone up since then, but that's about where we were at, I believe.
You see investments on the trucks?
Yeah, so the additional amount of trucks and I guess it depends on what type of trucks they use. They could use an 18-wheeler with a dump on it, or they could use a typical 12 or 16-yard dump truck, but just the additional, so not total, but just the additional fill would be about 400 to 500 trucks. And as compared to right now, the total proposal is about 150 to 200. So, if you add that on top, we're essentially tripling the trucks.
Mm-hmm.
So the red squares, that's where there's some kind of a post or footing or something like that?
Most of those are catch basins or manhole structures.
Okay.
Oh, or the 2 jellyfish structures as well.
Right.
They go pretty deep.
Where are the jellyfish structures on there?
Sure.
So we have 2 jellyfish structures. One is directly adjacent to the building here that handles roof runoff, and there's another jellyfish structure right there that also handles roof, but just a portion of the roof that goes this way.
Are there any of those installed in town, these jellyfish structures, or any nearby that I could look at what the?
I could find out from Contech if they've sold some for projects. I haven't used them until now because their main use is phosphorus, and that's a fairly new regulation in town.
So Joel, do you see any benefit to raising the site compared to what the analysis we just saw?
Well, actually, what I wanted to do was to take a closer look at these charts, because I think I can infer, I think that I wasn't necessarily convinced that the number that they were using for the seasonal high groundwater was accurate. And so I think I can infer that if it's a foot off or so, what that would look like. So I think I would still want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, certainly if it was, a large percentage of the area that goes away when you raise it a foot up, then I think I'd be much more inclined to it. But this seems very isolated. And that was the other thing I was concerned about too, is I didn't want it to be spread all over the place. But if it's fairly isolated, then I'm a little less concerned. So off the top of my head, but I still want to look at it.
Sure. Yep, so if there are no other questions on that, I do have some additional information for O&M that I know was brought up last time. So if there are no other questions, we can move on to that.
Okay.
All right, so I know, Paul, you brought up at the last meeting the requirement for backwashing jellyfish, and that kind of caught me off guard because I wasn't aware that was a requirement. I believe you were referring to the R-tank systems. The R-tank systems require backwashing if sediment buildup is greater than 6 inches to a foot inside those. And that's a standard practice for subsurface systems because you have to wash the sediment to an access point. But in this specific scenario where the R-tank system is only tied into roof runoff and not into pavement or sidewalks, there's no expectation of sediment being built up in there. And then also there's the pre-treatment of the jellyfish before it. So really the expectation of sediment within that R-tank system is low to none. The jellyfish system itself, Joel, you were correct in part that there is significant cost just in the cartridges themselves. The typical cleaning of them is similar to a catch basin where you open it up, you get to the sump of it, vac it out like a catch basin would. But every 2 to 3 years you need to replace the cartridges, so that's where the extensive cost comes in. And those cartridges can be up to, I think the total for what we found was about $14,000 for all the cartridges on the site. So every 3 years, about 14 grand. And then in the years in between where you're not replacing them, you just remove them, wash them out with like a regular garden hose, and you can replace them and extend their life that way. And then I already addressed the R-tank, so I believe that was the 2 questions on O&M that we had there.
Are they the only company that makes something like that? Are they the one company that has that?
There are several companies that make items like the jellyfish you're referencing.
Yeah,
There are several companies. Contec is probably the biggest, but they're also the most responsive and most helpful, which is why I've chosen to use them here.
They're called the Stingrays.
They don't get along.
Yeah.
Fighting for the same clients.
Does anyone else have any more questions about the project elevation or the O&M?
Well, Anita and John may, but we don't know.
Anyone else that's here,
This is true.
able to speak? Okay, so then do we want to go to the scope of the third-party construction overview?
My recommendation, since that's more of a discussion, would be to wait for John and Anita.
Okay,
I think we're gonna want.
And also, I think we did ask, did we not ask Beta for their inputs on what the scope would be? I thought we had.
I don't
that's in the
remember.
letter, though.
Didn't respond to
I
that.
think we may have talked about having the applicant submit a draft so that the board could review and
We can probably, as a team, come up with a general scope that we would like, and then if we come to the next meeting, we can kind of zero in on what that scope might look like. I think our intention tonight was to kind of open that discussion and see where the board's direction wanted it to go, so that we could have a starting place. But I think just in the interest of time, we'd like to, we can draft up a scope on our own and we can discuss it next time.
Okay.
Fair enough.
And what about the performance guarantee? We had,
Yeah.
that was something I think you mentioned.
Yeah, and I assume that, that we were gonna, I think what we asked for was an estimate of what cost, so that's what the 14,000 is, an estimate of the replacement cost for the jellyfish every.
Yeah, so what I've done since the last time we met was I reached out to each manufacturer of each item that we're using to get a more concise yearly cost, and all the O&Ms that you've received in the May 1st document has all those updated costs. So you can use that document as kind of a guideline.
Okay.
But yeah, that 14,000 is just every 3 years, so.
Right, okay. So that's probably something that we want to draft up ourselves and then propose that.
If I could just add something to the discussion of the third-party peer review scope. I'm sure it's obvious to everyone, we are trying to wrap things up here. It was our hope that if we could get through the beta review, and it seemed to be satisfactory to the board, and if we could, discuss the project eligibility, elevation, which we did, and thirdly, figure out the scope of the peer reviewer, that we felt would be in a position at the next hearing to discuss the draft decision. Because we could integrate this third-party scope, we could integrate, a final decision on the elevation, and of course, you could report in the decision that Beta had reviewed and were comfortable. And I still think we can potentially do that, although we'll be reviewing the Beta stuff at the same hearing. We're going to hopefully talk about a decision. Again, the issue of the elevation, once Joel's had a chance to look at that stuff, we could then wrap that up too in that same meeting. I'm a little concerned though with the third-party reviewer that if we send you guys a suggested scope, we're going to get to that next meeting, and then I would suspect you're going to want to have Beta review it, so we're going to get pushed again. So I'm wondering if we can't put that scope together and submit it directly to the board and to Beta,
I think that'd be great.
so that they would have time for that next hearing, hopefully, to say, we agree or we disagree with the scope, we can come to an agreement on it, and then we can move to a discussion of the draft decision. So does that, I guess that's all I'm asking. Would that be okay to send that directly to Beta?
I think so, and that's in part because I don't think we have I think that we would be relying heavily upon what Rob thinks a good peer review would be. I mean, a good, independent review would be anyway, so I think that makes sense.
All right,
I mean,
great.
As opposed to other things where typically we do like to dig into a little bit.
So is this independent reviewer, like the clerk of the works of the install? Is that what we're thinking about? Is that what you're, so they're verifying
We're
what's
trying to
being
figure that
installed?
out.
Well, I would think at least it would involve someone who is there for the construction meeting, and who then is following up regularly to see that all of the things are in place, particularly for the ramp plan and so forth and so on, are being followed.
Okay.
I would think that's primarily what we'd be wanting.
Not a traditional clerk of the works.
Right.
No, but a particular one that's knowledgeable in this department.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we even talked about maybe, I think we talked about maybe it's a service that Beta could provide.
Sure. We agree with that, right? Who has more knowledge of the site other than us than Beta? And, quite honestly, we don't have a problem with them suggesting the scope, even though they might be doing it. Because I think we're going to be able to provide, we have a good enough understanding of what the board, and I think, what the board wants in terms of oversight. We've never talked about having someone there full-time, that wouldn't make sense. But we have talked about the fact that, again, I think, at the start-off, kickoff meetings, be given this construction schedule, maybe they do a weekly review and report.
Check.
But during the actual RAM, as we're, doing the soil and doing the thing, when we know we're going to be in those areas and doing that work, that would be probably, we expect when you'd want the peer reviewer to say, yes, they're taking the soil correctly, they're handling it correctly, they're putting it in the right place.
Right.
And check.
Right.
So we'll put that scope together. I think, again, we'll do a good job of it, and then we can work with Beta and get that finalized.
The one thing I would ask is if we're expecting to close this out at the next meeting, that we have all of the material that we're going to be discussing and reviewing well in advance of that meeting, like the Friday at least before. The peer review stuff, everything, because I don't have time during the week necessarily to review this.
Okay.
So we continue into
take a motion
22nd.
to,
Second?
You
I
want to
will
go to the
move
22nd?
Continue
You want to
this
go to the
until
22nd?
this also going to the 22nd?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
The next one would be, after that would be June 12th. Do the board a favor and go to June 12th.
Sigh.
Why don't we go to the 22nd? I just don't have authority from my client to go beyond, I mean, we assumed if we were going to be continuing, it was going to be the 22nd.
Are we going to be able to get the documentation on the Friday before?
But just for clarity, the documentation that we're talking about is just the scope that we're writing up and then any back and forth with Beta regarding
Beta's
it.
review of it, yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing else outstanding
Nothing
that I'm missing, is there?
outstanding.
But as long as we can get their approval on it.
Right.
On that Friday,
Yep.
like something written from Beta. You guys are in cahoots on this, all right.
If the board is, if the intent is that the board has Beta's peer review back by Friday the 17th, from experience, Beta needs at least probably 2 full days. Particularly where they haven't, this is an entirely new submission.
Without outstanding issues. You know, everything cleared up.
Right. I don't know how detailed these things are or complicated they are.
I'll make a motion to move the public hearing to the 22nd.
Continue.
Yeah, we can always, I will second.
Okay.
And we can always adjust it if we find, if circumstances indicate we're not going to get the documents in time. Yes.
Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We'll assume they're in favor.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Sorry we had to deal with technical difficulties.
Yeah, well,
We did what we could do.
computers,
not your
they're
fault.
here to make our lives easier, right?
Why I love
Yeah.
it. Well, thank you very much. Have a great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
Well, that leaves us in an odd position.
Everybody go over what John sent?
Huh?
Yeah, John had written a draft of the ADU letter. Did you have a chance to take a look at that?
I did.
Is Anita and John back on?
Anita's on, John, they both dropped off for a moment. Anita's back on, John is not.
I
Are you
mean,
able to get them up on the screen so that we can at least see them?
I don't control that part of it.
Uh,
It's awfully strange what's going on with this tonight. And Rob, we're all set on 270. We'll be in touch.
Is he
I feel
still
like
in?
it's a bit like Hal, you know? If anybody remembers 2001 Space Odyssey.
He
What
used
was
to
that?
treat me.
John's
still
back.
off Signal.
But it's a bit like Hal.
all right, so do we want to go tackle the MBTA warrant article update and next steps? Or do you think we should hold that as well?
No, I mean, I can give an update, give where we're standing, and then give my suggestions for
Okay.
next steps. So the article passed the town meeting. I think everyone's aware of that. Doreen did go to the town clerk to pull papers for getting it on the ballot. She has been getting signatures around town. I believe the deadline from Tricia is Friday.
Thursday at 4 is what I heard.
So I heard today it was Friday at 1, I think, since they close early.
I think in the paper, it said the 9th.
Yeah, so initially
was
I was
quoted in
told
the
Thursday
paper.
the 9th.
Tricia said in the Sun.
But today I heard about a Friday deadline, and I thought I heard 4, but that doesn't make sense because 4 o'clock is after closing hours on a Friday.
Well, if that's the case, I mean, the clerk has and will stay open.
Okay,
So
so,
let's assume that.
so it's Friday at 5.
passes.
From Tricia, it is Friday at 5. So she has until then to gather, I think it's almost 1,400 signatures.
1,580 or something.
something like that. And then it goes to the select board to set an election date, special election. My recommendation is if it does go to a townwide vote, we should publish information, FAQs, on the town's website. We should reach out to town meeting reps to have them contact folks across town and get the word out about what the facts are for this topic.
So I have a couple things. I mean, one is that from the conversations just the weekend before town meeting, online, it was clear that a number of people, including some town meeting reps, were just kind of tuning in for the first time, which makes me feel a bit daunted in terms of
Shocked.
approaching a much larger population. I think that in the past, when there have been things like this, there have been, people forming committees with, groups. I mean, one thing is that we brought forth our article and got it passed at town meeting. So I would say that the formal objectives we've completed, and in some ways, I would love it if we can make this be more of a larger group going forward that's bringing it forth, that being the town meeting reps, as you said, maybe have precinct captains or something like that of people reaching out. I don't know about walking precincts. I don't know if that's reasonable, but I think there's going to have to be like grassroots organizing, and I don't know that we necessarily have to or should be.
Yeah.
I think if it goes to a town vote, we just got to get people to the polls.
Yeah.
The issue
That's the biggest thing,
The biggest worry that we would have here
is being outnumbered by
is
certain-
is having the attendance at the polls stack.
Yeah, and that's what I fear. That's the only thing I fear.
Yeah.
There's enough.
In order for this to pass at the polls, it does need a significantly high turnout. I think 15% is what I remember.
I read that somewhere.
That's higher than normal elections. However, I do think that for hot-button issues,
Right.
like overrides and like
The
this,
override, people
the
were coming
numbers
out
do
with
go up.
2 wheelchairs.
So the question I have is, since we did our job and brought it to town
Yeah.
meeting, is it still our responsibility to fight this on behalf of the town?
It feels weird.
Or is this
advocating
now,
for this.
is this now at the select board level and town manager's level and the entire town? It's not planning board versus Doreen in a public.
Yeah.
In a public.
It gets weird. It's like
It's
a
the
weird.
town now
Right.
versus a proponent that's trying to knock it down. So I think the town has to come together with the committee to say, how do we back this?
Right.
And it's not.
I
it's
think we
not
should
sponsored
position
by
ourselves-
planning
So you
board
make a
anymore.
valid point, because this is a weird situation where we would be out like
We've done our job.
proponents,
And that's what I was
just
saying.
for the plan, not for
Yeah.
for the bill itself.
I think,
You know what I mean? It gets a little confusing. There'll be people like, oh, they want that. You know what I mean? They're out proposing.
I think
No,
we're
I agree
much
with you.
safer positioning ourselves as an information source than as a proponent.
advocating.
That's
or
right.
an
Right.
opponent. And I think we have to stick to that role.
But I do agree that it should not just be the planning board. I think
Absolutely not, absolutely
that
not.
point,
So
it's
my
get out the vote.
recommendation, once this goes before the select board, I'm assuming they'll have to call a special meeting to discuss this. Once we find that out, my recommendation is the planning board vote to recommend to the select board that they appoint a special committee for publicity on the facts and information, so that that can be pushed out townwide.
Once the select board, once the clerk certifies the petition,
Signatures.
and the select board meets, don't they have a certain number of days to?
Yeah.
Do we know what that number is?
I think I read 60. I've been looking for those
To set the date or to?
For the
Actually
date
have
for the special election to take place,
So what
I
you're,
think.
so what you're contemplating is a special committee that is basically serving a 60-day purpose at
Yeah.
best. And do we, I know we had an exchange, did you get any clarity from, do you want to share any of that
Yeah,
tonight?
so there was a question, and it's still not clear to me, so that question it may need to go before the select board with Paul Haverty, because it is not clear, like Mike said, it's not clear that elected officials can be a proponent of a position,
Yeah.
but they can disseminate factual information.
So maybe logistically, maybe the planning board's ask of the select board is when that's on an agenda,
Yeah.
that maybe there's a separate agenda item where Paul Haverty's in attendance.
Yeah.
I don't know if this needs to be a joint meeting, or if it's, members of the planning board can forward their questions, but it sounds like if the town's interested in appointing this committee, having Haverty counsel there to really provide clarity as to what the rules of engagement are is pretty
And-
critical.
Yeah, but I think it's pretty clear, and we can probably vote on this, it's pretty clear that most of the people in this room don't feel it's our responsibility to lead that. It's a town-wide issue now,
Yeah.
and it should be the select board. So clarity can be provided,
Right,
but
then
then,
What's the process?
then the process should be the select board probably
Town
appoints
meeting
a,
reps.
Yeah,
Committee.
I think that accurately, that's the way I feel anyway.
And you had mentioned, I think you'd mentioned that the statute requires a minimum of 15%, is that what you were saying?
To vote, to
So
have
if
voted.
there's if less than 15% actually turn out and vote,
It
what does
fails.
that
And it
mean?
fails.
it fails.
Oh,
Wow.
that's another avenue.
But given what's happened in other towns and what happens usually with these ballot questions, the turnout usually goes pretty high.
Yeah, because those,
Okay.
So I would not count on,
my biggest concern would be making sure that there's accurate information that's
Yes.
out there.
Well, it's already,
Which I understand it's not, but I think if we do go down this road and if there is a committee, then I think there's probably a mailing to every home with facts. So that there's correct information that's coming from the town to all the residents for them to vote on it.
Yeah.
Because hearsay is not going to go in our favor.
and I would be happy to participate in that committee
Yeah.
from the planning board with someone else if they want, but I don't have the time to lead that type of effort.
And it's even questionable whether
Whether
not
it's-
100%
whether it's
clear whether the
appropriate.
town can even do that.
Yeah.
Send a mailer out on town letterhead.
Or, I'm just saying, how do you get the facts out?
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed, right.
And then, because there's false information on the other side right now, and people are,
Right.
lining
you
up.
just gotta
because
reach
it's
out
false
to people
information.
that you know in town and make sure.
I mean,
people get out
it's
to
worth
vote.
asking Haverty if this committee could host precinct meetings,
Right.
and the precinct members
Coffees.
get the word out
Yeah.
to the people who live in those. There's a variety of ways to engage with the voters.
But in either
I would
case,
have
it
to
should be that
campaign.
committee doing it and not us.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
I would like to make a motion that we ask the select board to add an agenda item if and when this does come up to them, the special election, that they have also Paul Haverty in attendance to answer the question about what role the town can play in disseminating factual information.
And what role who can play?
Yeah, I mean,
Who-
it needs to be general.
And if the town can do it, appoint a committee to lead that effort of putting out factual information.
I didn't know if it was that.
I'd second that.
Oh, what is that?
All in favor?
touch anything.
Aye.
That's for my audio.
Mike, you.
Mike?
Aye, yep,
Anita,
You voting? Anita, you voting?
I'm good with that.
keep switching over.
She's an
Oh,
aye.
there's a raise. Is John on?
She's definitely not.
It shouldn't.
Have we seen John lately?
And then,
Bonnie can't.
they're there.
Yes, John is there.
It's too late now, it doesn't matter. I
don't know what it is.
John's your camera on?
I can't reach Tom, so.
Yes.
Oh, there he is.
All right.
Yes, there he
So it's
is.
unanimous.
It's unanimous. Okay.
Would you like me
What was
to
weird was
reach out to
I
the chair, or would
normally-
you like to do that?
Here,
To Pat?
join, and I know
Well,
why that.
Virginia,
She's a liaison.
why don't you?
Okay. I will reach out to Pat.
Okay, next time.
No.
What's next?
Are we missing anything?
What can we talk about right now without full communication? with
Next
the rest of
is
the board?
liaison updates. Did conservation? have
Yes,
they have met?
so Conservation met yesterday. It was a work session where they did not take public input. It was kind of frustrating because a lot of the issues and questions they had were pretty much the exact discussions that we had when we were doing our policy discussion.
Yeah.
And I could have helped them out quite a bit and made it a quicker meeting than 2 hours, but they ended up getting through a lot of stuff. They want to tighten up the policies and procedures for their hearings, making sure things go faster. Similar to what we had put in place where we have information coming to us ahead of time so we can read it. They're doing a similar policy. It's funny because they're asking for an information documentation repository because a lot of the information they get on these projects, they get from our agenda links.
Yeah.
So,
So how
that,
does that work? Do we have a way to do that?
no.
We've
we
been
were talking
I've been
about it, though.
asking
Yeah,
for it for
so-
3 years.
I did reach out to Tricia about this, and the system that's in place right now, I forget the name of it, doesn't have the capacity to really do that. The best they can do is what we're doing now, but they do want to have some document repository in
So let me
place
ask
at
a
some
stupid
point.
question. When you're looking for something back in an old meeting, how do you go about that?
I use the agendas.
Yep,
Yeah,
I use the
Just the
agendas
agenda?
that's
also.
the best way.
So I have to- I go to my-
Click on the
Yeah.
agenda, go through every agenda,
Yeah.
find out who was there. and read
Yeah, in
it.
a
I go
true
to my
document,
notes.
in a true
There's no way to
document
just type in a
repository,
search.
you could search, you could have project
Yeah, there
folders.
should be a program.
Th-
Project
It's just not in
folder is
place
really
right
the
now.
key.
And so Tricia does know that that is kind of needed, but there are other priorities right now. So yeah, the other things that they talked about were a lot of the communication between boards that will get discussed at the gap analysis that the DPW is going to be pushing forward. So we'll wait to hear more information about that, but a lot of the same issues that we've seen about where do we share information, how do we get information from the different boards and groups, they're also struggling with too. So hopefully that gap analysis will help that.
And figuring out where the lanes are.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else have any liaison updates?
The master plan committee is meeting next Wednesday, getting some of the stakeholders on the various items on the master plan is a bit like pulling teeth, but we've actually started to get a little bit of reaction. We got some stuff today. Not a great deal to report there, but the committee is alive and it is well. Scott Romel's done a really good job, by the way, of pulling stuff together.
Center Village, we started with NEMCOG, it was a kind of get-together meeting.
Yeah,
To do some,
We're supposed to have a site walkthrough, like walk the town of Chelmsford, the town, center, and then come up with a game plan is pretty much what we want to work
like
on.
a zoning update or overlay update for the Central
What we want
Village
them to
plan?
go through, yeah.
Yeah.
We got to kind of narrow down their scope, basically.
I had an email yesterday, I believe, from Pat Wojcik inviting us, anyone who would like to attend to a municipal open house to be held between the all the committees in town and the townspeople. It's to be held at the Public Library on June 12th at 6 to 8. We also have a meeting that night at,
Yeah, I
So-
noticed that.
so maybe we should have our meeting start at 7:30. Evan, and then, you know, if anyone who wants to go to that can, like, go and leave a little early. So I'm gonna try and go to that. I don't know if anyone else, I think the more the better.
Yeah, I would say.
What day?
Where is it, at the library?
June 12th at the oh, yeah, at the library.
And what is it? I know you mentioned the name, but is
It's
the
a-
planning board
it's a
supposed to have a
m-
table there?
We can have a table if we want, and,
Don't care anymore?
Is the purpose for interested
It's a-
residents to engage with?
yep, with committee members, it's to generate interest in, you know, people serving and knowing
Okay.
what committees are doing and kind of, just general outreach from
Other-
town committees to the town citizens, which I think is a great idea. I think they did it last year. We had a meeting and we were,
We can talk about everything that we're talking about tonight there.
right, I mean, we could hand out the FAQs if we wanted to.
Yep, that might be a very good opportunity.
Yep. Although June 12th, that,
Oh, so then I also have a
Might be
text
after the
just
election,
now
actually.
from Anita saying that the election, the election will be
Unlikely.
June
At
4th.
the rate things go.
Yeah.
June 4th.
Oh, that's quick.
Wow, that's quick.
How do we know what
Which
the date
election?
would be? I wish you could talk,
If there was
Anita.
a special town,
the town election for the MBTA.
if,
I think it's a 30-day, I don't
30
know.
or 60?
I
I
don't know.
thought it was
I've lost
16.
track.
I don't
Well,
know.
when would be the select board meeting to take it up?
Their next regular
It's-
meeting is the 20th.
Yeah, but
Right.
They
the
have to call a
select
special
board, I
meeting.
think, will have to create a special meeting probably on Monday.
Okay.
If if it comes in
Well-
at 5
Well,
o'clock
couldn't they
on
just
Friday.
put it on their
So the
regular
June
meeting?
4th date was likely something that the clerk's office identified as
Yeah.
a viable date?
Probably.
Okay.
John wants to call in to my phone and get on
Fine.
speaker for a topic.
Good.
Okay, John, call me.
This is new, look at this.
You might want to shut down. You're going to get back.
Oh, you should be able to do it right to the mic.
Okay.
You got to shut your computer.
My computer's not
John, you
on.
can't hear.
John, you need to mute your,
Yep, there we go. I just muted myself.
okay.
Can you hear me okay, Chris?
That's, yeah,
All right. Okay. I'll,
Tell him to mute his side.
yeah, you need to mute your computer.
He did.
okay. Okay, I'll just step away from
Turn
that.
off speakers is what you need to do.
Can you hear me okay now, or?
Yeah,
Yes.
It's better.
All right. Okay, good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. Sorry that we're having so many technical issues tonight. When we get to the ADU letter, I just wanted to ask, because I know we probably won't meet for another 2 weeks. If anybody has any suggested edits, would it be okay to ask the committee members to send them to me? Because what I'd like to do is work with Evan and Becky to get this letter finalized, and then at the next meeting, we could probably just pass it around once everybody agrees on it, and ask everyone to just sign, and then, you know, I could send it off electronically by email to get it to them quicker, but we could also send, you know, regular mail copies if you wanted to be more formal, but
Well, you could do
just wanted to
both.
ask people's thoughts.
I think we could do both, and also I don't think we have to wait till the next meeting. I mean, we could agree to this in principle, make a couple suggestions if people have them for edits, at least in theory, and then maybe once we have those edits, you could send out a revised draft and get everybody's confirmation. If, I don't expect there to be any glaring disagreements, and then we could just get it out in the next, you know, maybe early part of next week, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds great. No, my concern was just not knowing how fast
Move it
they would
along.
move on this legislation at the State House. I just,
I think they're not
figured,
doing
you
it
know.
till July, but I think the sooner we get our, I mean, I think we're already, you know, the schedule was such with MBTA and town meeting, et cetera, but I think, yeah, we're already late.
Right, absolutely. No, that's why I figured time is of the essence.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great to me.
Okay,
Thank you, John, it looks good.
thank you, John, it looked
Thank you,
good.
John.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night, hope you feel better.
Also, there's a liaison report for the Board of Health.
Oh, that's gotta be good tonight.
So I was there Monday night, and Anita was there as well. And Hildreth came up, and in that, the Board of Health did request the 21 Phase E to be performed, and that it would be performed sooner. In other words, not to wait until construction or whatever, but have it done now, so that we could consider it as part of our process as well. And so just in general, I thought the Board of Health did a really excellent job of clearly stating their position and why they were asking for what they were asking, and so forth and so on. And so, so I say kudos to the Board of Health.
Nice.
Yeah,
And I think it's just great to be able to, you know, share information and so forth. So I think it's a real high degree of cooperation between us and the Board of Health and the Commission for that matter. So, yeah, so it was really good. And there was other things, but that was the main one, I think.
well, also they requested a peer review of the
Yes, of the hydrogeo study.
hydrogeologic
Yeah.
study.
And it was also identified that there's PFAS detected in 2 of those the monitoring wells. And that is in a report, and I don't know if we have that
I
report.
have the report, and I'm gonna
Okay.
be sending it out.
Okay, so we'll be getting that report as well.
We got PFAS everywhere.
Yeah, but it's another case of, well, you know, we have infiltration up gradient.
Yeah.
So, but
exactly.
this might be a little bit different, but in any case, we can talk about that when we actually have the hearing.
Thank you. Okay. I don't know where my agenda is. Here we go. So annual goals and objectives, I mean, I think that everyone has all iterated and reiterated that we want to work on zoning issues and conflicts. I mean, I guess maybe we shouldn't go into a lot of detail of making priorities, but I think that's the first thing we need to do. I think we need everybody, or we need John and Anita to make a priority list, but maybe if everyone could come up with 2 or 3 things that are their highest priority items before the next meeting, and maybe we could send them to Evan and have sort of like a scatter diagram of important topics we want to delve into, and then we can make a punch list. Does that sound reasonable?
Yep.
And then for new business, we have before us an opportunity to reappoint or appoint the Master Plan Implementation Committee member for a 1-year term.
I can quickly name off the names that you've already appointed. Fred Brousseau, James Deargay, Mike Raisbeck, Scott Rummel, Peter Spahn, Brian Strip, Deb Taverna, and Aaron Drew.
Yeah, it's a good team.
Wasn't Glenn on that too?
Glenn is on it. He had emailed me a while ago saying that he no longer could continue, but I don't think he's officially submitted his resignation letter.
Okay. So shall we have a motion to reappoint the prior Master Plan Implementation Committee?
I'll make a motion to reappoint Master Plan Implementation Committee as constituted, I guess.
1 year to what date? You want to pick a date? 1 year from now?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Second?
I,
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, another year.
Okay.
Giz
and
and I.
ADU letter, does anyone have any edits at the moment?
You know, let me talk a little bit about this in far more general terms.
The ADU letter?
I think the ADU letter expresses what we talked about as a group. And I got to thinking about it, and talking with my better half over there as well. The more I look at it, the more it looks to me like a sophisticated piece of NIMBY.
The letter or
The letter, and
our position?
I think something that would make me feel a lot better about it is if this group actually had a plan and a vision for increasing housing in Chelmsford, and I don't see it. I see this as a response to we don't want any more development, rather than a
can't-
response to,
You can't handle more development is what it.
well, you know, we
right
have
now.
a building code and stuff and regulations on
funding, though, if
that
we-
will keep us from, certainly on the sewage issues.
So
Yeah.
what I was thinking when I read it is maybe we should reword it as more of an ask for funding than,
Yeah,
because
that
they're getting
is
these
one
from
approach to
everybody.
take.
But if we threw something, say, within the infrastructure, like if we had money to tie down to the MWRA, may help the situation in my town, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or, you know, whatever, school money.
Well, I also would emphasize, maybe a bit more, the fact of the owner occupancy requirement, just that, like, that would be one thing that would mitigate at least probably some of the numbers.
I tend to agree with you. I also think, though, I mean, if you look at what the intention is of the bill, I don't believe it is to produce, 4-bedroom additional units.
No.
I think it's much more likely to produce 1-bedroom
Or studio.
granny pods and studios. I think the arguments about stressing the school structure are overstated. I understand the issues with sewage and water, or sewage in particular. That controls itself to a considerable degree anyway, because, you're not going to be able to build it if you can't flush it. And until that problem solves itself, I think a lot of increased housing is self-limiting.
But
So-
it's not, because we've got a ton of projects in front of us that are just putting in septic systems instead.
Well, they
of
are,
limiting
if
the
they're allowed
development.
to. I mean, putting in a septic system is hard. It's a lot harder than hooking up to sewage.
Well, if you
People
put it
want
on
to
one
avoid it if they
bedroom,
can.
if you
Where's
put a
the one removed?
one-bedroom granny pod on, wouldn't you be under the 500?
You'd be
You'd
in the
probably be
500
un-
range.
yeah,
so-
you'd
So
be
you
in the
could,
500
so that's not
But
gonna be
that-
a limiting.
Well,
But it's.
I mean, that's
That's
just
a
one
number,
thing.
that's a
I'm-
number, but there will be capacity added. You know what I mean?
There will be capacity added,
know
you're
what I mean?
right. And I don't, what I'm trying to say is not that capacity doesn't matter, but that it is not, at least that capacity is not an overarching issue.
but it is.
No, it is
because
not.
Well, it is
They're
'cause
going to
there's
be
not
allowed
enough-
to add the capacity,
But we don't have more capacity.
But if there's not
but
very
they
much
do,
capacity
because
to
it's
add,
under
yeah.
the 500.
Because we don't, as a town, have the
We're at
capacity to give
capacity.
them,
Just
but
'cause
they'd
we
be
say
able to
we
get
have
in
capacity doesn't
underneath
mean
the
we have
regulations.
capacity.
Right, that's true.
But they are allowing.
Right now,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that the town doesn't choose to change.
We get,
change
if
the
things get any
regulation.
tighter and they'll
But
cut
it's
it
not
back.
changed yet.
Yeah.
It would be DPW in consultation
Right.
with the select board.
It
My
ain't
point
gonna
is,
be
if the
us.
state were to approve it, while the town right now would allow every single family to increase no more than 500, that doesn't mean that the town has to, continue that,
And let's,
particularly for a
not get-
detached, for a detached ADU.
That's not.
I don't want to get
Issue.
lost on this particular small point. My more general point is, what the heck are we doing to, at least at some point in the future, increase
We did.
housing
we
availability
did
in
use-
this town? And just right on cue, here he is. Hi, John.
Willis from the Knicks, there he is.
And I'm more interested in the debate than I am in the
Yeah.
actual answer here, but I think we need to talk about it. And tell me why this isn't just more NIMBY.
I'd be glad to.
Okay, fire away.
Again, I'm not saying that we can never build another unit of housing in town. What I'm trying to do is be realistic and say, if you listened recently to what the school superintendent and administration presented, excuse me, enrollment when he made the presentation for the feasibility study at town meeting, the Chelmsford schools, the population of school-age children the trend line is going up over time. That's
Yeah, I saw
already
that.
before all this development comes in. It's going to take several years, if the voters approve it, to build a park or school. That's being done to relieve overcrowding situations
That are
at the
currently-
elementary
That
school.
we're currently dealing with.
And we're current- right.
And they're coming down the pike.
So we know that our school age, we've already gone through a period where the number of school-age children has been declining for several
now
years.
it's going back up.
Now the bubble's going back up. You cannot easily reopen Westland School because it's such an older school. It will require massive renovations. It's being used as a community ed center. So I guess my thought is, you know, if you're going to ask voters to approve a new park or school, what's going to be the encore? If the school-age population suddenly goes up, you have to do something. So if you're asking voters to spend over 200 million possibly for a school, what's going to be the encore? Do you build another elementary school after that? I think that would be a tough sell. I mean, I support building public schools, but I'm just saying I'm trying to be realistic.
Yeah.
Then we listen to our public works director tell us how the sewer system is at capacity, and that really they are doing mitigation efforts to try to reduce inflow and infiltration. But realistically, if you do some large-scale development, you're not going to be able to reduce it that much. You can reduce it somewhat. So the only option really for larger-scale development is septic at the moment. So, I mean, I think we have to be realistic with the state. I did see an article in the paper recently saying that they asked the MWRA to do a study to see if Chelmsford and a whole other bunch of towns, it was curiously that Carlisle was omitted, and some others, should we be considered to have MWRA water supply but not sewer extended to this area? So I think you have to be honest with people and say, if you do that, if we ever do connect up to MWRA water, I'm sure the water districts will have something to say about that. The other thing is, if you're gonna, and the Public Works Department is doing a study right now, just to see what are the costs, how long would it take if we ever connect to the MWRA for our sewer
It'll take 10
system.
years.
It'll take years, and so I'm just trying to be realistic and say to the state, we hear your problem, but this isn't like this is a country town anymore. It's pretty much built out, and our infrastructure and our systems are taxed, you know, not a money tax, but they're pretty much being used almost to the exact limit. So what will we do if we encourage this development? So I don't know that and the other thing is, I wanted to point out in the end that we already have a limited accessory apartment bylaw in the books, and it seems to be
Good one,
working
actually,
well.
yeah.
And to me, this is not a case of NIMBY, because to me, these are just examples of why this is just overall bad legislation.
There's some aspects of that too, and I don't disagree entirely.
These are just examples of how it's going to impact our town, but there are going to be examples everywhere of how poorly this is going to impact other areas, because it's a poorly written legislation.
So let me put the question to you. We're becoming a town in which a substantial number of the people that live here now couldn't afford to buy in if they had to come in.
Yeah.
And which is pricing itself away from our policemen, our firemen, and our teachers. Okay, what do you propose to address that? What do you propose to address that? Because if we're not proposing something to address those problems, we're just
More affordable housing, not more housing.
more affordable. Right, you're absolutely
That's the
correct.
problem, is
All
that
right, what
all
are we
of
doing?
The ADU legislation
Yeah.
and the MBTA legislation are capping the affordable housing at 10%.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Right, it should be.
None of these legislations are addressing the actual problem of affordable
So,
housing.
and where are we pushing?
Cap it at
that?
10%, doesn't
It's not allowing us to go higher.
The
It's not
ADU?
saying you can.
I don't think it has any affordability
doesn't.
mentioned.
It has
Well, I mean,
no
yeah, that's the
affordability aspect to it at all, as far as I can tell.
Anita wants to.
She's driving in now from
Make sure your
Boston.
Give me
Speakers
a
are off.
plan. Show me a vision.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
we can hear you now.
Okay, I want to just address Mike's whole comment about what to do because people are outpriced out of our town. Well, first of all, Chelmsford's one of the most affordable towns in the Commonwealth, quite frankly. Second, that's still commutable to 128 in Boston. Second, you want to address these rising house prices, it's not building more houses in the Boston 128 up to 495 on Route 3 answer. It hasn't worked in the past, and it won't work now. What you need to do, and the state needs to do, and our legislators need to do, is incentivize corporations to move west and north. We've got
think that's a
plenty of
fair
housing
statement.
in the Worcester area. We've got good schools out there. You had manufacturing leave Western Massachusetts because towns that are, people living in poverty. That's what they need to do, not incentivize more housing closer to Boston. We don't have the infrastructure for people to get to work because the businesses are still on 128 and in downtown Boston. And we don't have the infrastructure. Furthermore, the reason why this ASU building, the people who are interested in this and who are pushing this, don't kid yourself, it's private equity. That's why it's written this way. And I've heard it from multiple people at the State House that private equity is behind this push, as lenient as this is. With it not being tied to owner occupied, this is just bad legislation all around.
Yeah.
There are towns with there's so much private equity there. Resort towns are now trying to put up legislation so these private equity firms can't come in, start buying up all like the beach houses and doing Airbnbs. And I think it was in the news. I think Nantucket's looking at it. I know York, Maine's looking at it. I mean, there's a lot of, there's trend of all businesses coming out, buying up these houses. That's why these houses are priced the way they are. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, well, I hear what you say.
So
I agree with a lot of it, but I still ask the question, what are we doing?
So my response to that is,
Yeah.
we discussed this, going through
I
the
know.
MBTA zoning, we found areas in town that we
Yeah.
want to do an overlay in.
Right.
Am I
so
correct?
in our punch list.
Right, and
So
nobody
we are
wanted the
moving
building.
forward on that. We've been tied up a little bit with this. And the kicker is, the MBTA zoning bylaw has zero to do with affordability. It's
Yeah,
all about
exactly.
just
That's a
housing
major
units.
problem.
That's all they want, is housing units.
Right.
They're assuming supply and demand, eventually,
Which-
we can catch up. But they're saying we're 200,000 units
Yeah.
short. So it's gonna take a long time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we do have to be proactive, and we have to move on other
Well,
areas.
that's what I'm trying to encourage.
Like the Radisson bill. That would have been a great, you know.
Yeah, it would have
you
been.
know,
I mean, I think another thing I would like to say, and maybe it doesn't speak to the issue you're raising at all, but I don't think I'd like to more strongly emphasize the owner occupancy as at least a movement that we could point to towards, it could make it better. It would make it better or more
worst
palatable.
part of
That is, I
Like,
agree.
that's a
That is
tangible
worst.
ask.
Maybe we just focus on that.
Yeah.
Well, I also would like to say something about, and this is NIMBY-ish, but the character of the town. Like if if all the single-family homes are taken down and, a lot of freestanding micro homes or whatever they are get built, it will especially if it happens by developers, it will dramatically change the character of the town.
is the classic excuse for
But then
NIMBY,
let's address that
plain and
that
simple.
fact that it's going to eliminate single-family zoning.
Right.
Well,
That's essentially what it will do.
Put a mighty big dent in it.
So let's address that instead of,
Yeah.
because that's going to do the same in any town. So
Right.
we might as well just get rid of single-family housing.
Yeah. So essentially, that's what this is.
But there's people.
Well, I mean,
there's
there are
a
other
reason-
things you could do, but nobody wants to do
But
them.
Mike, there's a reason people
Yeah.
move to Chelmsford.
I know. It's the reason I moved.
But you're talking about the reason you originally moved here to giving it
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
right? If I wanted,
Well,
if
I mean,
want-
it
if I
might
wanted
come to that.
If I wanted to
What
live in
I'm-
a town
What
that
I'm
had,
challenging this group to do is actually address the broader housing problem.
We are built out. Some other
No, you
town,
can-
No,
if
some
you
other
had to. I
town
mean,
that's
there are
not built
places in
out
Boston
can
that
do
go
it.
20 stories high. I don't want to do it.
I agree
but
with you. I think we should
yeah, you can
address.
put more in here if
I
you
think we
want.
got to be proactive about
Right.
building for the future.
Have to be
right?
proactive.
And educating the
Yes.
town meeting reps and have them behind
Yeah.
us, okay, instead of against us, which they were, it was great, having them behind us on this past one. But I think the ADU is the worst legislation that you can do.
Oh, I don't
That's gonna
see
wreck
lots
this
of
town.
bad legislation in my time.
That's gonna wreck this
has
town,
got
and it's gonna
holes,
wreck
but-
a lot of towns.
May I make a suggestion? Similar to the the MBTA discussion where the board articulated that, it was even asked at town meeting, I think someone asked, well, what is the board's plan for housing? And the board articulated that you intend to go back, look at the overlays. You mentioned Alpine Lane as an example.
Chelmsford
So
Mall.
it's not as if the
Chelmsford
planning
Mall, yeah.
board doesn't have a plan or a vision to look at and explore and provide new housing opportunities. You just, as you articulated with MBTA, you don't think this is the right fit and strategy for Chelmsford.
Yeah.
So it may be worthwhile to re-articulate that
Yeah.
in this letter. Because, for all we know, the state was compelled to pursue MBTA and ADU zoning because they've convinced themselves that if towns are left to their own devices,
They'll
they're
never
not
do it.
going to pursue. And yet, the Chelmsford
I-
Planning Board has clearly articulated that you do
Oh,
intend.
the Chelmsford Planning Board has talked about stuff. I haven't seen us do
Okay,
very much.
I would like to argue that in the last 15 years, we have built how many multifamily
We
units?
just did West Campus.
I
West
know.
Campus. This is
And
housing.
we've actually,
Faced with
permitted or
MBTA.
built how many affordable units?
We've
How
done
many
our fair share.
multifamily units?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have our share. And, if we say, I mean, I saw that stuff that you sent me, I didn't have, I couldn't really pull out the numbers I'm looking for out of,
We've produced about 750 new housing units each decade
Yeah.
for the last couple decades.
okay.
It's
Could we
it's
get a
significant.
breakout on that of how
Yeah.
many,
It's
what
significant,
percentage,
but I
how
think
many of
that's the
them are
message to the state,
multifamily?
right?
How many of them are affordable? How many of them are age restricted? That we're doing our work.
Yeah, you can mention that. They likely know what Chelmsford has done because they have metrics, and clearly they don't believe that every town has done enough or every town will continue to do enough. So their statutes are forward-thinking, and I think that's where the planning board has already indicated that you intend to continue to be forward-thinking.
Right.
Go into the existing overlays, maybe refine them, be a bit more strategic.
Right.
For predictable outcomes based upon local housing needs. But I think that's probably a message
Is a
that
good
that the
strategy.
state would find more useful.
But even if they agree with that statement that
Tot-
we're
to-
doing enough, that's not going to change anything because they still feel that many other towns are not.
Totally agree, totally
So-
agree. But
In the ADU.
I mean, you guys need to decide whether this is going to be Chelmsford-specific, or if it's going to take on kind of, we understand the issue, here's our strategy, we agree with you, but we prefer to customize our housing strategy, and
And
we
we've
don't
already
think.
done X, and we continue,
Right.
plan to continue with Y.
I think the challenge for the state at this point is they don't have a mechanism or a process where they clearly have commitments from towns that are going to proactively, incredibly look at providing housing opportunities.
Can we articulate that we will be doing that in the letter?
I think that's worth doing.
Need to articulate it. We need to say it.
You know what I mean, John? Like,
And we
put
need
a
to have some
passage in there
commitment to do
that
it.
during the MBTA process, we were enlightened into.
No.
I
We
wouldn't-
were already enlightened.
I wouldn't
We've
give
already
credit
built
to the MBTA process.
750 units.
He'll get brainstorm, let him go.
No,
have
but
a hit-
what I'm saying, it brought
was in a
forward.
moment there.
I was in a moment. I was trying to come up with the right
Sorry,
word.
sorry.
Let's blow our own horn. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, if people want to send it
we
to me or
modify
send it to
after.
Deirdre, that's, I mean, Madam Chair, to add to what you were just saying is, if you look at the data that's in, for example, that we publish in the budget book, since the last federal census, I don't have the exact number memorized, but we added about 7,500 or 8,000 residents, if my memory is correct, with all of the multifamily units that were added on
Yeah.
over the last several years that were built that people see. So for someone to say that we're not building enough, I think mischaracterizes it. And my other question to that is, if we've built 7,500 units, 8,000 units, when is it ever enough and when's the right number? If we still have a housing shortage, if we built say it's 7,000, let's be on the conservative side. We build 7,000 units, the town's all built out, there is a shortage of single-family homes or multifamily units. How does that, it's almost like a dog chasing its tail. When do we get to the right number? And do we stop when Chelmsford becomes looks like Medford or Somerville? Is that, because that almost seems like what someone on Beacon Hill has planned for this area.
I don't disagree with that, but that message is going to fall in dead ears with the state.
Any message we send is gonna fall on
They're-
deaf ears.
they-
It'll be a different letter, though.
They are-
It'll be different.
That is not gonna
Right.
compel at them, because they could say you can provide for your 1,500 MBTA zoning units and do it in a very, community character, aesthetic, appropriate way if you wanted to. So they're well beyond the
Not-
notion that development in
No,
and of
not,
itself.
not when they take away
No, I'm
all
saying.
our, when
if-
they do
if-
it by right.
No, I'm
Because
saying
the way
if
it's written now.
if communities embraced the notion
Yeah.
and embraced, we will do it, but we'll do it on our terms in a credible manner. But the state knows that more towns are not going to pursue that. Chelmsford's done a little bit of both.
More than most, yeah.
But that's why anything we write in this letter isn't going to matter.
Are we really above average on that?
Well, unless it says they give a law out there, and then they write at the bottom, except for
Just
Chelmsford.
like
If you were looking to tip the scales, you would do what the select board did. You would send a letter and send somebody in person to try to engage.
Occupied.
I think that opportunity may have ended for ADUs. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you're right. I'm not sure an individual letter is gonna move the needle as far as the state's concerned.
Well, I mean, if it helps with Rodney or Jim or Sierra,
Yeah.
Yep.
and
Has anybody talked to them and asked them individually, actually what they think on this?
I have not.
Because they may
but I
have some,
do-
I have.
they may have some ideas.
I have.
What have they said, Anita?
I mean, I've talked to Simon Cataldo multiple times on this, and he's given me quite a bit of insight. He, I won't say that he's committed one way or the other, but he has provided me with a lot of insight, and I've continued to talk to him about this.
Okay.
I think next time when people go to the ballots and vote, they need to consider this stuff. If they're not happy with these types of legislations, they need to show that at the ballot.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that's the answer, right? Like, you need to make sure you're telling them this. Because, again, this is, Beacon Hill is telling us how our town needs to be across the board. And there are certain towns like Lincoln, Concord, who have plenty of land, and a 900, square foot ADU that doesn't impact their town. They still have the space. But towns like ours that we have, people on a quarter-acre lot or half-acre lot and adding another dwelling, that does make us look like Somerville and Medford.
The piece that I think the statute references is the towns can adopt reasonable regulation.
Yeah.
Right, if
So-
we just
so
used
that-
our current regulations,
No. My point is, like, to Anita's point, it's reasonable regulation's not clearly defined yet.
right.
Right.
But if we just used our current regulations.
That wouldn't be considered reasonable, but adding, at what point does a lot become so small that adding a second detached dwelling unit is unreasonable? That's the piece of the gray area within the statute.
Any law.
So this notion that all 9,000 single-family housing lots in Chelmsford are reasonable to add a second.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The law doesn't say that. The law says towns can adopt reasonable regulation, and as we all know, that's gonna be far-ranging. Towns will
So
do
we
a
need to get
variety
on
of.
that. That needs to be at the
Yeah.
top of our,
Right, this
Yep.
is by right.
Yeah, but
That's the issue,
your
that's the issue.
regulations, your reasonable regulations may prohibit certain situations from even pursuing the opportunity.
Develop.
Yeah, but reasonable is defined by the state. We've already
Haven't
seen
defi-
what that
Right,
definition
they haven't
is.
defined it yet, right.
Yeah.
Right, but to Anita's point, in a community like Chelmsford, where lots, some neighborhoods are 7,500 square feet, that may be deemed unreasonable to
Yeah.
put a detached structure. I
Well,
don't
from
know.
our perspective, yes,
Yes,
but maybe
yeah.
not from the state's perspective.
Well, we
Right,
don't
so it's
know,
all
they haven't
To
told
try.
us.
To be
sadly.
determined, right.
we
And
put the regulation in place, and then if people want to develop their
Yeah.
lot, then
Wouldn't there be
they're
a lot
gonna
of
have to.
lawsuits going on? Like,
Well-
in the end,
No different than MBTA zoning,
Land
it's
court.
all gonna be litigated.
like a lot? Like a lot.
But that probably should be at the top of our bucket list.
Yeah, it
Put
should. I mean, we-
ADU reasonable regulations in place.
that should be there, and we really need to consider affordability stuff in line with what I often say is make sure the teachers, the policemen, and
Well,
the
this is a
firemen can live
production
here.
statute, nothing to do with
That right.
affordability.
Right.
Deed-restricted affordability.
Exactly. Now, the question is, how much would it change the values, and I'm not sure that it would.
If we change,
It would produce a new type of housing that the market isn't building.
Yeah,
I think the ADU is 900 square feet.
yeah.
So
it's
by
pretty tiny.
definition,
And it has- And it has to be owner occupied because you've got businesses, private equity that is just waiting to come in and buy this all up. And if it's not owner occupied, this will not help any housing.
I mean, that's probably the
prices.
most effective
Yeah, I think it
argument
is.
against it.
But is Chelmsford going to be able to put in that restriction?
No,
Not as
that's
written.
what
have to
we
get
wanted
them
to
Exactly.
do.
I think- but I think if
That's
a letter
what they
to
took
our
it out.
Community said, we don't like it.
Don't tell me that
but-
this is because it's helping the housing crisis. There's big money behind this. Because if it was supposed to help the housing crisis, they would have put in owner occupied. And this will not. This will be big money coming in and buying it all up, and we'll be in the same
That
problem.
that may end up being the
It's not
political
priced up.
compromise.
It might be the best we can accomplish,
oh,
but we'd have to, like, everyone has to be working towards that, and, you know.
And
everyone's out on their little
let's
island.
be honest, owner occupied sounds like a wonderful concept, and I kind of like it. But, all right, you have something, it's owner occupied. You build a granny pod on it, separate granny pod, you're still okay. Now the person in the big house wants to sell the property. What happens? Do you throw the person out of the granny house?
No, the
Because
new
it's no
person
longer
has to
owner-
live there.
No, I don't think you can do that. You may
They
be
could
able
live
to
in
say
either
you have
one.
to.
They could live in either one, they could throw them out, and they can move into the little one and
I
rent
think
the
you're
big
gonna
one.
find that owner occupied, as good a concept as I think it is gonna have some problems with it. Because people will now, they wanna sell their property. That means they can't sell it to anybody that isn't gonna live there. Well, maybe that can be enforced, maybe it can't. You need to ask those questions. That's a pretty strong limitation on transferability of real estate.
Okay.
Well,
And-
then don't build it in the first place.
Well, that might be a good idea, but,
Well, you bring up an interesting point.
I mean, it's gotta be asked, and we need to get a legal read on
We
it.
have private homes right now that.
I mean,
that are
at a
not
certain
all
point, you have a
owner-occupied.
taking, and now we get
What's
to
the
pay
difference?
for it, and I don't want us paying for it.
What's the difference on that, Mike?
What?
We right now have private homes that are not all owner-occupied.
Right, we
So
do.
what's the difference? How about an ADU that's not owner-occupied? There's no difference than a single-family home.
Well,
It's $1 million home that's
No,
being rented out right now.
Until you wind up
But it's still a
selling
single-family
into a
home.
situation where,
Single-family home. So now you're just gonna have two single-family dwellings on a, what we would call a single-family lot. You're gonna allow a double occupancy.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
what's the difference?
there's a big difference.
No, there is a big difference, but you can't have
Not in
one be
terms of-
owner-occupied and the other one on a private residence doesn't have to be owner-occupied.
Right, but you
Right.
don't have two single-family homes on a single lot.
No,
You
I
have to
understand that.
You have to subdivide
No,
it.
I know that.
So
But you're
you have controls in place to
focusing
prevent that.
focusing on
Maybe-
the ADU
maybe,
lot, we're not really focusing on the other.
are we also assuming that, the ownership pretty much has to be the same for both units?
The ownership is the same
Yeah,
for both units.
So,
Otherwise, it would be a condo.
although, yeah, there are lots of little corners around this stuff you need to be careful of. I wouldn't want to see us get into a situation where we wind up having some enterprising developer who wants to use this law to the fullest to fill their pocket.
We already do.
We do, well, we're
have
gonna have more.
We always will.
We're trying to figure out some way around that,
To then
really.
come back and whack us over the head with a.
Well, we're
with a
trying to
case-
figure out the best way around that.
With a
We're gonna be
claim.
busy the next 3 years.
Okay, I think we have worked our way through this
Yeah, anyway, it's-
agenda.
I hope everybody's sufficiently uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Well, they still have to hit that.
I will take a motion.
You have it.
What's that?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good.
Thanks for coming down.
Anita.
Thanks for Zooming.